Hey, been a lot of talk on Discord and a few other groups in Lemons about fuel jugs. Whether you go with just your VP Sunoco jugs, or put a little money and spend and get those Hunsaker jugs that they advertise that they can drain in 6 seconds. It certainly is quick. I've used them with some other teams before, and it's rapid. My problem with them is with it dumping that fast, especially when you get to that last fuel jug, you're going to spill a lot of fuel, and that's not ideal. You're all sitting out there in your fire suits while you're filling, and if you're jumping into the car still that day, you don't want to be smelling like fuel because you spilled it all over yourself. So I'm going to show you a few options that we've gone through on these, and I did some calculations, filling them up to 5 gallons, dumping them, seeing what that comparable time is versus that Hunsaker that's under 10 seconds, or as they advertise, 6 seconds. First, the stock VP fuel jug that you'll see, it has a vent here that just screws on. Now, if I use the stock fuel filler hose that you typically get from them, you'll see that you do have a kind of a mesh filter in there. And then there's another restriction up here as we get to the plastic. So there's a lot of areas that are going to slow down. So in that stock fill, I timed dumping 5 gallons in 2 minutes, 5 seconds. That's a long time, especially with this Blazer back here when we're dumping 18 gallons. For these jugs, it's a long time to stand there, especially when you're outside around in the Midwest here when it's hot. Holding a bunch of heavy fuel jugs, not ideal when you're all suited up. So the first thing you can do is you can remove that little mesh filter in there. So that is going to help get rid of one of the restrictions you're adding, that is removing turbulence in that fuel flow. And what that gave us was, without a vent and with the mesh removed, it dropped our dump time from 2 minutes and 5 seconds down to 1 minute and 30 seconds. So that's huge. Anytime, like I said, especially when it's hot out, I think that's a big plus. So the next thing would be to add one of these vents. You can see there's 2 types here. The old Sunoco ones, you had to tap in here, so we had a little smaller one. The newer ones have a barb similar to the VP ones, so you can just tap right onto those. I did use some epoxy in there because the thread types were a little bit different, just to seal them up. All tests were done with this big one, not with this one. But so by removing the mesh and then adding a vent, it dropped it all the way down to 1 minute. So definitely still getting better. If you do it without a vent, with a vent but without the mesh, you're 120. So really not a big difference in there. So I would say, if you're going to do it, remove the mesh, remove the vent. That drops you down all the way to 1 minute. So this is kind of our team's version 3 now. We have the big vent here. Got a new hose barb from your local Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's, your favorite place. 1-inch diameter hose here, and then to the top we've got, I believe it's actually a 7/8 internal diameter aluminum tube. Your aluminum tube is typically going to come in like a 3-foot section. Up there, your hose anywhere from 6-foot, 10-foot sections, and then your barb here individually. You'll buy those individually. Buy this, and then your vent tube. You buy in a 10-foot reel, something like that. With this setup, I can dump 5 gallons in 22 seconds. So for me, I think that's huge. That's a big drop, and I would estimate. I probably have maybe $20 per jug in the fittings, hoses, and everything. That may even be a high estimate. And when we compare that, you can buy these Sunoco VP fuel jugs from, whether it's Speedway, Summit, anywhere online. I think you can buy them from Walmart now. I've seen, they're about $35 each. If I estimate high and say I've got $20 for all the fittings and hoses on top of that, I'm $55, $60 per jug, dumping 22 seconds, 5 gallons. Whereas the Hunsaker with the filler hose from their website is $125. To me, that's worth the money. I can buy 2 of these jugs at that price, especially if we're at these racetracks that are far away from any civilization. Buy twice as many fuel jugs so you're not running into town to try to fill them up during the race. So I think it's a big plus. Like I said, for me, it's not. I understand saving a few seconds in endurance racing isn't going to be a big difference. But for me, it's more of a health and safety thing of, I don't want to be standing out in the hot sun all geared up. I can shave, 4 or 5 minutes off my fueling and not holding these heavy fuel jugs and dumping them in. So I think it's a huge plus to change to these. Do kind of a quick last view here. So you got a plastic fitting that will thread properly directly into the fuel cap. Just take that red plug out. A hose, that aluminum tube there, you want to make sure that you make that aluminum tube long enough that you can get past the vent connection on your fuel fill on your car. That way the air that's venting up through your fuel tank, you're not getting those air bubbles. That'll help reduce splashing when you're filling up as well. With the bigger aluminum tube, you will have to remove the flapper out of the fuel neck in your vehicle. Lemons, that has not been a problem because that doesn't seal your, there's no liquid seal there that's going to keep fuel coming out. So from what we've experienced, there's no problem removing that, but it always helps probably to ask. I think that's all I got on that one. Like I said, I think it's definitely worth the cost difference to just do it this way versus the Hunsaker.